trip that he's planning to the Serengeti. His name is Currie Gilbert, and his speech is, are you ready for some? Are you ready for some? Currie Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. It's an honor to speak to you tonight. So when I came to my deliberation on what I was going to come to speak about in my second speech, I thought perhaps I could come to something inspirational, like Deanne would speak about, or Matt, or some others that have spoken. And I thought, well, maybe I should go to something motivational, like you'd hear from Tim, or from Tim, or another Tim. Lots of Tims. But this is not that speech. This speech is everything you need to know about fantasy football. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you have heard of fantasy football. Okay, great. Who has played fantasy football, either past or currently? Who has won a league championship? Okay, so a couple professionals in the room. You guys can leave or just don't pay any attention. But I'm glad that everybody's heard about fantasy football. So what I want to talk about tonight are the 3 F's of fantasy football: fun, friends and family, and fanatical. But before we can get into the 3 F's of fantasy football, you got to know a little bit about it. How to play, how it's constructed, where did it come from, why is it so popular today? So fantasy football was developed in 1963 by a bunch of guys in a league called the GOPPPL. Took me a while to memorize that. That's the Greater Oakland Professional Pigskin Prognosticator League. These guys got together in the 60s and they wanted to compete with one another in a virtual format by selecting NFL players. And those NFL players were going to be on their teams, essentially, and they were going to compete against each other. So basically, what you do is you start with a draft. You have a draft, you get together with your friends, it's a great time. You get to hang out, grab some beers, grab a football. It's one night a year, just like in the NFL or the NBA or other institutions and groups like that. One time a year you get together and you're going to select players that are going to be on your team. And so as you select players to be on your team, you're the general manager, you're the owner, you're the coach. You have to figure out if your team is going to perform better than someone else that you're going to play against. And you get points in doing so in weekly competition. So as you construct your team in the draft, you don't have to know much about football. If you're worried about that, or you're thinking about, I don't know anything about football, I'd never be able to put together a draft. There's tons of stuff online. You can get into a draft for free. You can play people online. You can play with your friends. You can play with your family. And I'll get into the 3 F's in a second. But it's very easy to do, and so many people are doing it. It's a lot of fun to have competition and be with your friends. But you got to be your own general manager, your own owner, your own coach. That's the thing. You're selecting the players that you feel are going to do the best for you at the beginning of the year. If you select a bunch of guys and they get hurt, your team's going to suck. You don't know that. If you select a bunch of people and you think because you read something on the internet that they're going to be great and they crash and burn, you're going to stink. But, so that's the real trick about this. So now that you know a little bit about fantasy football, you get a draft, you get a team, you're together in a league. Most leagues are 10 to 12, maybe even 16 players, which are team owners, your friends typically. Fun. Fantasy football is easy to learn. It's easy to do. You can do it online. You can do it with friends, family. We'll get that to the second. You have weekly games. So each week you come together basically and select your players that you feel are going to perform the best that week. So you look at your roster that you've selected in your draft, maybe a couple quarterbacks, a couple running backs, wide receivers, tight end, kicker, defense, and you got to say, all right, are these guys going to perform well this week? Or is my running back hurt? Or is it going to be snowing in Green Bay and going to affect how many touchdowns that Aaron Rodgers is going to throw. You got to take that stuff into consideration because the guy you're playing against, he will or she will, and you're going to get thrown down and texted that your team's sucking if you're not paying attention. So it's a lot of fun. It brings people together. And that leads me to my next point, friends and family. You can do it with your friends. You can do it with your family. It's very, as I said, easy to do. And the most time that I spend in the fall, really with my college buddies who are in my league, is through fantasy football. We text more, we talk more. We're talking about everything that we're doing with our league, who's doing well, who's not doing well. It's a reason to get together for lunch. It's a reason to get together for dinners and just hang out and spend some time together with friends. Kids can even get into it. I know some guys that are in leagues with their sons or daughters. They help select. It gets the kids into football. Why else would you be interested in a game with like San Francisco versus Oakland? Normally, if you're not from there, you wouldn't be interested. But if you've got somebody on that team and they got to do well and you need a touchdown, you're going to be screaming at that TV for somebody in Oakland that you may not even know about. But he's on your team and you got to score. So that's an interesting aspect to the construction of fantasy football. Fanatical. Fantasy football has grown from the guys in the Greater Oakland Pigskin League to 24.4 million people. There was a survey done last year by I think Challenger Grand Christmas, who actually do surveys for like NPR and their think tank. They put a survey together and said that worker productivity accounted for $6.5 million in $6.5 billion in losses last year alone because of people messing with the fantasy football lineups during work. So it has impact. My company has since well shut down and locked down any availability to get online and check out fantasy football or do anything like that. But it has spawned a TV show. 2009, the FX channel launched a TV show called The League. It's all about fantasy football and the guys that are in it, their wives and their families. So it's really gone mainstream. It's something that's become a phenomenon. There are celebrities that play it. There are podcasts. There are websites. So many different things out there in social media on fantasy football. So don't just take it from me. Maybe you need a celebrity host to say something. So I don't know. I could bring Christopher Walken in here and he'd say, well, once you get into fantasy football, you're never going to get out. It's simple as that. And I'll be damned if anyone is going to take football away from me. Thank you, Mr. Walken. Appreciate that. So, take it from terrible impersonation, Christopher Walken. Fantasy football's fun, easy to do, Mr. Toastmaster.